You're listening to Boomers Today with your host, Frank Sampson.
Well, welcome to Boomers Today. I'm your host, Frank Sampson. And of course, each week we bring you important and very useful information on issues facing baby boomers, their parents, and other loved ones. And I just want to, again, which I do every show, thank everybody for all their support. Our listeners are growing every day, and it's because of you. Many of you are sharing the podcast with friends or relatives. Many of you are listening on your phones. That's our stat show: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, a lot of different ones. Or you could go to our website at boomerstodayradio.com. So again, thank you so much. And I know we're getting a lot of listeners all the time, growing, because it's not me, it's our great guests. And today we're not going to disappoint you as well. I mean, we've got with us Jamie Blumenthal. Jamie is a board-certified music therapist, and since 1982, Jamie has worked in hospitals, schools, nursing homes, and community settings, providing music therapy for clients throughout the lifespan with developmental disabilities, acute and chronic psychiatric needs, medical needs, issues of aging and hospice, grief and loss, as well as offering sessions for wellness, personal and spiritual growth. Jamie has extensive experience working with older adults in all levels of care and community and a variety of facility settings. In addition, she worked as a department head, supervisor, program developer, and trainer. Ooh, I got out of breath there, Jamie. Welcome to Boomers Today.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I just want to commend you on your work. You've been doing this a long time, and I think it's just tremendous what you do. So I just wanted to thank you for that. And
thank you.
Yeah, so maybe you could give us an idea. How did you get in? I know you've been in it a while, but how did it happen? How did you get in? And I'm sure it's a very rewarding, from a feel-good standpoint, type of work. I would think it is, and maybe that's what's kept you in it.
Absolutely. So I actually found out. First of all, I started playing music at a young age and knew that I wanted to major in music. My father was a hospital administrator, and he told me about the field of music therapy way back in the 1970s. And I mentioned it to my clarinet teacher. He told me his wife was a music therapist, and I had an opportunity to work with her. And I went to college for music therapy. I majored in music therapy. I got my bachelor's and master's in it. And I've been in it ever since. And what has kept me in it is that we all respond to music. And I never tire of that. That even if someone is nonverbal or is total care, there is still a response to music. And so that is what has kept me doing this all these years.
That's wonderful. That's great. So I guess, how would you explain what music therapy is? And I would think that it definitely takes a specialization or training, I would think, that you just don't go out and hire a musician and say, I'm doing music therapy. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so there's actually the definition for music therapy is that it's the clinical and evidence-based use of music interventions to accomplish specific goals with a therapeutic relationship by a credentialed professional music therapist who's completed an approved music therapy program. So essentially, there are degrees in music therapy, and part of the training is we have to have music background. We have to be musicians in the United States. And we have to have knowledge of all the instruments. We have to have knowledge of therapy and how music impacts everyone. And there's many different areas also that go into the education and training. Once we graduate with a degree in music therapy, there's a required internship, and then there is continuing education credits to maintain board certification. So it's really quite involved. And it's important to know that we have that science-based and clinical training, because music impacts us on so many levels. And it's important that people have someone who is trained who can deal with whatever issues might come up for a client because of the music.
That's great. So I know that, you happen to be in Northern California and did your education at Sonoma State in music therapy, but are there
actually not?
Oh no, I'm sorry. I apologize. Okay. You
yeah,
taught
that's
there.
okay.
You taught there. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I actually was trained and educated in the East Coast at Montclair State University.
Okay. All right.
And I grew up on the East Coast. And
Gotcha.
then I did my master's degree at Antioch in Santa Barbara.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah, and there are
how many
a lot
programs
of
are there? How many programs are there? If somebody was interested in being trained and educated in this field, are there many programs around the country?
There are not a lot of programs, and I don't have the exact number, but there's a National Association for Music Therapy and musictherapy.org, and they have that information. They can tell you, they do all the credentialing for the music therapy program, so they have the list.
Oh, that's good to know. So that's musictherapy.org. That's great.
Right.
Good. So what are the, I'm sure there's various processes you have to go through in music therapy. Maybe you could kind of give us an overview of that.
Yeah, so there are three really important basics to music therapy. So music therapy provides an experience for clients within structure, and it's the rhythm that helps provide the structure. So anytime we listen to music with, like, maybe a march, automatically we might think of a parade, or our feet might start moving. Or if it's dance music, we might start moving our bodies. So the rhythm helps provide structure in the music. There's also experience within self-organization. And what that means is when we listen to music or are involved in music, it helps us to clarify things. It's an internal process, and we begin to clarify things for ourselves internally. And then the other aspect is that music is experience within relating to others. It's the one thing, we could sing together as a group, we could play musical instruments together. So it makes for a great means of connecting with others through a nonverbal means. So those are the three primary processes in music therapy.
Gotcha. And explain what it's meant. I wanted to understand this a little better. The ISO principle in music therapy. Maybe you could explain that.
Yeah. The ISO principle.
ISO.
And
okay.
And that is all about joining the client. So we take a look at many of the nonverbal aspects of our clients. So, how fast or how slow is their speech? How fast or slow do they walk? What are their emotions? Are they happy? Are they sad? And what we do is then we find or even create the music spontaneously to match where the client is at. So we join them in that. So if someone is sad, we might play maybe some slow music. If someone is really anxious, we might play music that matches that level of anxiety and then maybe slow it down to relax them more. So it's a really important part of music therapy, that we meet the client where they are at, and we are with them and using the music to support them in that space, and then try to move them beyond that.
Great. So, Jamie, as you know, I myself am in the senior care business. I mean, I love doing the podcast, but most of my time is spent in the senior care industry. And I don't even know. I know that I have been in literally over 1,000 assisted living, memory care locations, et cetera, around the country myself. And I've witnessed uh, residents who have been diagnosed with some form of dementia, like Alzheimer's, and they may not even say it. They might be at a level that they're not even saying a word. But then when the music starts, it's like this person comes to life. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because that always amazed me. It continues to amaze me when I see that. And that could be that they are singing, they're tapping their foot, they're singing, along, and maybe even themselves, they're playing an instrument. Okay. When maybe their short-term memory is almost non-existent.
Yeah, it amazes me to this day also. I share that with you. Music is so closely connected to our memory. And so when we hear music that we're familiar with, those memories are tucked away inside, and the music brings those memories to life. And music is represented in all parts of the brain. So when we hear something with a strong beat, someone with dementia might just start tapping their foot to the music. If they were a dancer, maybe they'll even do some dance steps. If they were a singer, they might begin to sing. If their primary language is different, from the language that they speak later in life, they will connect very strongly with the music of their early childhood and the music that is in their primary language. And it's wonderful to see, and it's an amazing thing to see. In my experience with dementia clients, I see different things happening musically as dementia progresses. So initially, someone will be able to sing along all the words to a song. And then as the dementia progresses further and further along, sometimes they might start to forget the lyrics, but they still will remember the melody.
Amazing.
And then as dementia keeps progressing, then sometimes, and we're talking as it really gets, more towards the end stages, they will respond just to the rhythm of the music and just to the beat. Yeah. So it's an amazing thing to bear witness to and to see. Sometimes we think that because someone doesn't remember things that they may not respond to music, but it's actually just the opposite. And it's been a wonderful thing to witness in my clients.
Oh, it sure is. I mean, every time I see that, it kind of brings tears to my eyes. It's just amazing. So that's why I say your work, it has to be a feel-good type of work as well. I gotta believe.
Yes. And, one time I worked with someone who taught piano, and they knew the scales, and I would play duets with this individual, and sometimes I'd play the beginning of a song, and I'd ask the question, "Do you know this song?" And the client would say no. So asking questions, I learned very quickly, was not the way to go. But as I would play the music, this client would move her hand over the piano keys in the air as if she were playing. And I knew that the client knew the song.
Hmm.
And it was really interesting to see. So the client's body knew the song, and all the motor planning was still there. And so we would play duets, and the client sometimes would play by ear. And sometimes, the client just knew it from decades of playing the songs.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, is most of your work one-on-one with people or more in group settings, would you say?
It's both.
It's both. Okay.
It's pretty evenly both.
Great. So, Jamie, we're going to take a real quick break. Just need to recognize our sponsor here. And then when we come back, maybe we could discuss some examples of people that, that you've worked with. And we'll talk about that. All right. So, do you know anybody who may be concerned about an older driver? Well, Senior Care Authority's Beyond Driving with Dignity program is a facilitated self-assessment program for older drivers. This program has been designed to serve as a vital tool to facilitate older drivers and their families as they make appropriate decisions regarding the future of one's safe driving career. If the individual is a safe driver, an advisor will provide him or her with strategies on how to remain a safe driver as they progress through the aging process. If driving retirement is the appropriate decision, then the individual and their family are offered possible alternatives, resources, and a specific plan to ensure a smooth and successful transition from the driver's seat to the passenger seat. So to learn more, you could go to www.beyonddrivingwithdignity.com. That's www.beyonddrivingwithdignity.com, or you can call 877-907-8841 and you can connect with a Senior Care Authority advisor in your area. We're back with Jamie Blumenthal, who is a board certified music therapist, and learning a lot. So, Jamie, maybe before we get into maybe some examples, maybe you could just share with our listeners, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, how would they do that? Or if maybe you could repeat the organization's name if they were looking for a music therapist in their area.
Yes. So I can be contacted through email, musictherapy@msn.com. I'm in process of putting together my website, so people could look me up even on the internet too at Jamie Blumenthal. But if you live outside of Northern California, there's two organizations that you can contact for a music therapist. One is cbmt.org, and they have a list of all the board certified music therapists. And then the other organization is the National Association for Music Therapy, and their website is musictherapy.org.
Great. Well, thank you for that. So
you're welcome.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about both the psychological and physiological aspects of music. Give us kind of an overview, and maybe even if I'm sure you have some examples. You already shared some already, but maybe some examples of people that you've worked with, and to give everybody kind of an idea how music therapy works.
Yeah. So some of the psychological aspects of music therapy would be that we might play music together as a group or individually, do some songwriting, or the therapist might do improvisation and encourage the client to improvise along with them. The client does not need to have music training to do this. We use all kinds of instruments. Um, Sometimes we might do lyric interpretations, maybe, sing a song and talk about the lyrics. And it gives clients a way to express what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and to work through maybe some of the emotions that they have. It also gives, like for the elderly client, it gives them a wonderful opportunity to share memories and to talk about their life and even the ups and downs of their life. One client that I worked with had been another one who had been a professional musician. Now, I must say that you don't need to be a professional musician to receive music therapy at all. It's just coincidental. But this person had had a stroke and wanted to do some singing, and she would suggest songs. And it was so interesting. I worked with her for a couple of years, and I didn't realize how well I actually knew her through the music that she would pick to sing. And it was very interesting to me at the end of her life when I went to her memorial. They talked about how she was involved politically, and during the sessions, she would often pick songs about peace, or she would pick songs about human rights. So it was so interesting for me to see that connection, how that would come up, these issues that were important to her, and helped her maintain who she was as a younger person through old age and through decline in health. Some of the physiological aspects, music can impact our heart rate. It can actually help slow down our heart rate, our breathing, muscle tension. We can walk to music. It can help with gait training. So for someone who, I had a client who had dementia who was quite anxious one day, and this client was looking for a way to leave the space that they were in. And I brought the music over to the client. I happened to have my clarinet with me, and I knew the client really well. And so I wanted to help reduce the anxiety and some of the behaviors that went with that anxiety, the pacing and the agitation. And so I started playing my clarinet. I started playing this client's favorite songs. And that distracted the client. The client began to look at me. And then over time, I very slowly changed the speed of the music. So I would slow it down little by little as I played. And the client became calmer and calmer, and eventually was able to come back to the group and be part of the group. And it was a wonderful
I could
thing
envision.
to
I could
see.
envision. I wasn't there, but I can envision this happening. That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and it took a few songs, but it didn't take very long. And the client would automatically start singing. So it changed some of those physiological behaviors, and music does that for us.
Right. So I know we talked a bit about people with dementia, cognitive challenges. What about just overall rehabilitation, just rehab? Talk to us about how music therapy could play a role there.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So some of the newest areas of research in music therapy is in neurological music therapy. And we know that for those who have Parkinson's, for instance, that walking to music helps reduce the freezing that happens in movement and can reduce risk for fall. And there are even videos I've seen on YouTube quite a while ago where, they show someone walking without music and then someone walking with music, and the change is phenomenal. So a music therapist can help with that. Other aspects, if somebody has had a stroke and they have aphasia, there's a form of therapy called music intonation therapy. that can help with the aphasia. It's also along the lines of stroke. If the upper body has been impacted, then part of the rehabilitation can be playing different rhythm instruments to music to regain strength and to regain even activities of daily living. There are so many different kinds of rhythm instruments. There's even a rhythm instrument that mimics stirring. So that can help if somebody has to stir things in the kitchen. They could even hold like a tambourine or a shaker and move it from down by their side to up over their head. And that kind of mimics that having to reach for objects. So those are just a few of the ways that music can be used in rehabilitation. And it's just a few of the many, many ways that it's used. And I want to actually add, the other thing is that if there's music, sometimes people will do the therapy a little bit longer, that it helps motivate them internally. And I think that's an important thing also.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So we unfortunately only have a couple minutes left, but I had to bring this up because I kind of kid around about this subject matter, but I'm going to ask you pretty seriously. I mean, as the boomers age, obviously I go into a number of communities and, they're playing Frank Sinatra music and they're playing, music from, which I like, by the way. All right. But I grew up with the Rolling Stones and rock and all of that. How do you see it changing as people age who have maybe a connection with a different type of music?
Yeah, you bring up such a wonderful point. Thank you. So we all connect to the music with which we heard while we were growing up. So, and I've noticed over my 40 years of practice that I am changing my music. The music is becoming much more contemporary. So I always play the music that is important to the client, not what is important to me. Right. But what is meaningful to the client. So we're seeing now that there's still that generation that likes Frank Sinatra, but there's certainly in the facilities now the generation that likes rock and roll. And so that is shifting, and that needs to shift, that we have to play the music that is meaningful to our clients. Otherwise, they're not going to connect. And music therapy is all about connecting.
Right. Yeah,
and touching someone at that heart and soul level.
I'm glad you're doing that. That's great. That's great. Jamie, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. And we got to have you on again. It's great.
Thank you, Frank.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I want to thank everybody for joining us on Boomers Today. Please be safe out there, and we'll talk to everybody real soon.
You've been listening to Boomers Today with Frank Sampson. To learn more about today's show, visit boomerstodayradio.com and join us next time for another edition of Boomers Today.